Sabrina.
Hello, Kassia.
I got to speak with the lovely poet and New York Times bestselling author Kate Baer recently, and can't wait for everyone to hear this episode.
Ooh, tell me everything.
So Kate is a mother of 4. She has been a writer her entire life, and yet her first book was published only 2 years ago. It was her first paid piece of writing, and it is all about womanhood. And it's a collection of poems. So it's really short, really accessible, and completely gorgeous pieces of work about womanhood and motherhood and the misogyny that kind of underscores all of it.
I love when artists use their craft to be activists, to tell a story about real life. I think that's so important. Good on her.
And it's super real. I mean, she does not shy away from the good, the bad, the ugly that is motherhood and all of its messiness. And she sources beautiful inspiration from those experiences. I mean, she talks about depression. She talks about sexism. She talks about birthing children. She talks about how we so honor and celebrate pregnancy, and then a pregnancy ends and you're expected to go back to being like a cute little buttoned up, perfectly healed, healthy, beautiful woman. And how none of that is true to our experience.
Yeah, super unrealistic. And you know that I'm the kind of person who wants to tell the whole truth, right?
All the things.
All the things. You come to me when you want to know the whole messy truth. And I love that Kate is also telling, exposing the reality of our experiences, because it's not always buttoned up and so pretty. And we need to know, we need to celebrate the mess.
And she does that. She holds nothing back. She launched this book. She published it. It shot to the top of New York Times bestseller lists. And despite the fact that it was so well received, she, of course, as a very proud, bold feminist, received a lot of criticism. And it started to trickle in via social media. And her second book is a book of erasure poems, where she takes pieces of text. Some of those were criticisms that she received on social media. Some of those are court transcripts. Some of those are public speeches. And she starts to erase different words to write her own piece of poetry in response. And it is mind-blowing.
Wow, that sounds so fascinating. Kassia, tell the people what these books are called.
So we've got What Kind of Woman is her first, and I Hope This Finds You Well is her second. Her third book, as we find out, is actually due this year, and she was generous enough to share a brand new poem from that collection with us today. Now, before we start the episode, Sabrina, I had a real fangirl moment with Kate, and I asked her to read 2 of the poems that I think best set the stage for this conversation. Hopefully this provides a little bit of color and context for those of you who don't know her work. Take a listen.
I can no longer participate in World Breastfeeding Week. Memes about tired mothers. Nurseries dressed in millennial pink. I cannot discuss potty training, sleep schedules, and noise machines. How to fix a 30-minute meal and keep our children healthy. I cannot take one more minute of conversation on strollers or video games, your mother's cruel suggestions, what so-and-so says is her trick for making time for daddy. No, I did not, will not, could not know what it is to be a good mother when mother is already heavy enough.
Kate, thank you so much for joining us today.
Thank you so much for having me. I'm honored to be here.
Well, we're thrilled to have you. Reading your work is like standing in an echo chamber of my heart and clearly thousands of other readers. So first and foremost, before we even dive in, thank you for doing what you do and for putting these words down for all of us.
Oh my gosh, you're welcome. And thanks for reading.
No, it's truly an honor to get to have this conversation. So I'm curious, was this the body of work that was kind of always bubbling up inside of you? Do you feel like this was something that you needed to birth for a while, or did this feminist voice, was there a moment that you can point to in marriage or in motherhood that was kind of the catalyst for these stories, this work?
Yeah, I think both of those things are true. I was writing kind of around these topics for maybe a decade and, just kind of saying everything but. And it's always feels kind of cliche to say this, but there was definitely a feeling of
sitting down to write this book and feeling like everything I've ever felt is just kind of coming out now. Not that writing a book is easy and like you just sit down and write it, of course not, but there was definitely a feeling of here's everything I've ever felt, and I'm just going to write it down. I was also kind of pushed over the edge in many ways in my personal life. We had I'd recently had an unplanned pregnancy, a very undesired pregnancy, which resulted in a beautiful child. But the process of that was, I was already drowning with three, and that was just like handing me a bag of bricks to sink even further down. And so I was basically clawing my way out of that, both depression and just clawing my way out of feeling like not myself. And so that was also contributing to this book.
Well, and I think it's something you've already touched on, something that nobody is doing, which is talking about depression, which is talking about the loneliness of motherhood, which is talking about the fact that a very unwanted pregnancy can result in a very loved and welcome child, right? Like these are all these things that we just don't air and that we're expected to carry, on our own. I mean, I'm a mother of three, and I can't imagine right now being surprised by a fourth and the weight of that. And how overwhelming that would be. I wonder if there isn't, was it, I guess the first question is, was it cathartic in some way to put this all out on paper for you?
Yeah, for sure. There was some catharsis, although writing in general is kind of layered. Writing it down is maybe cathartic at times, but then the process of editing and having other people read it doesn't quite feel the same way. I wouldn't use cathartic as the word to describe that. Yeah.
Fair. Well, and I mean, it's easy to look at Instagram and look at your account and look at, hundreds of others and see like a polished, beautiful version. And that's not what writing is. That's not what most women's work is. It's ugly and it's hard and it's effortful. And I mean, you've told stories about the Panera parking lot and stealing away the moments and how hard it is to scrape together the time to produce a body of work like this.
Yeah. I think there's just a lot we assume about other people on the internet, which is a very simplistic way of kind of describing the internet in general. We miss a lot of nuance just in so many ways. And one of those ways is looking at other people in our fields and thinking, look at them, look at all of what they're accomplished, but you're not seeing like 10 years of rejection and failed books. And it's just something I try to remember too, because I struggle with those feelings. I'm looking at people who are doing all sorts of wonderful, great things and thinking, look, it's just falling into their lap when I know that's not true. It's not true at all.
Yeah, no, it makes it easy to think. Did you ever buy into the belief that, a real writer couldn't write about motherhood, couldn't write about the mess that is motherhood, that these were kind of separate things? Did you ever battle with that kind of misogyny, that internalized misogyny?
Yeah, for sure. I spent a few years, man, every time I talk about time, ever since COVID, I can't remember how long things were.
Oh, we're like living in a time warp. Yeah.
Could have been like 10 years, this could have been 5 years, but I spent time writing my own blog or writing pieces for Huffington Post on motherhood, and then just quit because I felt like I wasn't being taken seriously. I kept being called a mommy blogger and a mommy writer, which really made me feel like I wasn't a serious writer. And so I kind of quit writing about those things so that I would be taken seriously. And only now am I realizing, well, I was just digging my heels further into that belief. I was internalizing that misogyny and basically perpetuating it myself when really, there's nothing inherently unwriterly or about motherhood. Motherhood is such a universal experience. Everyone has a mother, for better or worse. And, I've said this many times, but, how many coming of age stories have we read about baseball that we're all expected to read, when that is certainly not a universal experience, but somehow declared worthy? And yeah, it's taken time